Hello, I'm Emma Philpott. I'm CEO of IASME, and IASME since April has been the sole Cyber Essentials partner of the UK government. So we run the Cyber Essentials scheme across the UK and the Crown dependencies now. So Cyber Essentials is a certification scheme, so it will give a certificate to your company. It's government backed, so the government developed it with industry partners and the government owns it. It was developed back in 2014, so it has been going for 6 years or so. And the number of companies being certified to it has increased significantly. So now we certify about 1,300 companies a month, and that's going up quite fast now. So it's made up of 5 technical controls. It doesn't so it is meant to protect you against the common internet threats. So this isn't going to protect you if some very clever hacker is out to get you and targets you, but it does protect you against the most common threats which come to you via the internet. And that is how most companies are breached. So it protects you against things like many of the phishing attacks, the common hacking, and the password guessing. So the 5 technical controls are listed here. They can look quite technical, but actually, if you look at the detail of what they are, they're quite simple. So the best thing to do is to look at the detail on the IASME website or the NCSC website. And you can also ask you can ask certification bodies and IT providers about these areas. Um, and you can also download all the questions from the assessment for free from the IASME website. So one thing to do is to just look through the questions, and that can give you a lot more information about the aspects you need to put in place. There's actually 2 parts of the Cyber Essentials certification, 2 assurance levels. So the lower assurance level, you just need to answer the questions in the self-assessment. You don't need any evidence. You don't need to have any scans. You answer the questions, and then one of your board members signs to say that the answers are true. You do this on our secure assessment platform, and then an independent assessor will go in and mark your answers to say whether you're compliant or not. You do have to be compliant with almost all of the questions, but they are relatively self explanatory, and it will be clear that you do what you have to put in place to be compliant. If you're not successful, you will get feedback on every single one of the questions that you were not compliant on. And the assessor, in his feedback, will try and help you to understand what you need to put in place. If you're not successful, you actually get another chance. You get a few working days to try and sort things out. Maybe you just need to give more information to the assessor, and then you can resubmit. And that's without any additional cost. But we can only do that once for the cost. So the basic level Cyber Essentials costs £300. Then the higher level of assurance is called Cyber Essentials Plus. So it's still the same 5 technical controls. That doesn't change. It's just the level of assurance in terms of when you get the assessment done. So an experienced cybersecurity professional, well, they used to visit your company, but of course they do it remotely now. They basically do a technical audit on you. So you still have to answer the self-assessment questions, but then the cybersecurity assessor will do the audit, and that will include an internal and external vulnerability scan. And they will just check on a representative number of your computers to check whether there's any out of support software or not. So how do we know that Cyber Essentials works? Well, a few years ago now, Lancaster University did a research study where they took lots of small companies and they worked out which of those that had the Cyber Essentials controls in place and which of those didn't. They then looked at all the common internet threats and worked out which of these threats would be stopped in the case where the company had Cyber Essentials controls in place. So as you see here, 69% of the common threats were stopped completely by having Cyber Essentials in place. So here you can see that only 0.7% were not stopped at all. And as you see, the 30% were partially mitigated. Now, most of this is a case where a vulnerability is exploited and the patch for that vulnerability was not yet available. So, for example, somebody might find a vulnerability in Microsoft Word, and the cyber criminals get to know about this vulnerability, and they can use that to access your computer and your company. But of course, as soon as a vulnerability is found, Microsoft would be working as hard as they could to develop a code which would patch that vulnerability and make sure that nobody could use it to gain access to your computer. But that takes time. And so this partially mitigated aspect is where the patch is not yet available. So everyone knows that there's a vulnerability there, but there's no patch available. Of course, as soon as the patch is available, and you're given the opportunity to upgrade your software, then you can do that, and then the threat would be stopped. So that is not, so the partial aspect of it is more to do with how long it takes a company to patch any software and not to do with the Cyber Essentials controls themselves. So when we look at the companies, well, the organizations that get certified, you'll see here almost 3/4 are micro or small sized organizations. Of course, that's a great thing that we can see there, because our biggest worry at the beginning of Cyber Essentials was that it would prove to be a barrier to the smallest of organizations. You can see here that even micro companies are able to get certified with very, very little problem. And very interestingly, we find that it is more difficult for the large organizations to get certified to Cyber Essentials than it is for the micro companies. And that's because they have so many endpoints, so many computers and mobile phones to keep up to date, and that they need to get patched within 14 days. That's actually pretty difficult for large organizations. So you can see here, if you're a micro organization, even lots of sole traders, you can still get Cyber Essentials. As I said before, we license this to certification bodies, and there's 235 of them across the UK and Crown dependencies at the moment. At least one is based in the Isle of Man, and many of these are small and micro companies, as well as there being a few large ones. So hopefully there is the size of organization to fit all of you, as well as being able to assess and certify. Then these companies can also give advice and support. So they can support you throughout the whole process of getting your company ready for Cyber Essentials up to being certified. I'd just like to talk also a little bit about cyber insurance. So if your organization meets the criteria here, so you have less than £20 million turnover a year, you certify the whole organization, and you're based in the UK or the Crown dependencies, then as soon as you have Cyber Essentials, you can automatically have cyber insurance. You do get the option to opt out, so we don't make you have the cyber insurance, but it doesn't cost any more money, and it doesn't involve any other forms. So you would just automatically get it. So the cyber insurance is underwritten by AXA, which is a large underwriting company. And the limit is £25,000. Now, you might think that doesn't sound very much, but that isn't. That the main point of that is it gives you access to 24-hour incident response. So if you have a breach or a cyber incident for the whole year after you get cyber insurance, and any time of day or night, you will have a phone number that you can ring, and you will get technical and legal advice. So they will help you stop the attack, whatever it is, and they will help you know your position legally. And that cover is up to £25,000. And we've had some of our clients have been saved by having that there. I mean, people often feel that they don't need cyber insurance because they hope it will never happen to them. But when it does happen, particularly if it's out of hours, you don't know who to ring, something's happening and you don't know what it is incredibly, incredibly fantastic to have a phone number where you can ring up and get help immediately. So that is included unless you opt out for companies that meet that description. So the main reason for failure. So Windows 7 at the moment is the main reason of failure. So you have to be using supported operating systems or applications. This isn't just on your computers, this is also your mobile phones. So, for example, if you're using an iPhone 5, you wouldn't be able to, well, for business data, you wouldn't be able to get Cyber Essentials because iPhone 5 is no longer supported. When we say supported, we mean getting regular software updates. So I mentioned earlier the problem about people finding a vulnerability in something and then the organization managing to patch it. So for unsupported software, so iPhone 5s, for example, if someone found a vulnerability in an iPhone 5, nobody would patch that anymore because it's unsupported. And so that's why if you're using unsupported software, you can't get Cyber Essentials. And this is a big problem because with almost everything in Cyber Essentials, if you fail, you can usually fix it within just a few hours or days, and resubmit and then pass. But of course, if you've got hundreds of computers or using Windows 7, it takes a lot longer and it can be quite expensive to upgrade them. But it is really important to be using supported software. Many of the breaches that are seen by the UK government are due to people using out of date old software. So just a very quick word about IASME Governance. IASME Governance is often seen as the next step after Cyber Essentials. So there you can see in the little blue circle, that's cybersecurity. That's equivalent to the Cyber Essentials controls. But the wider green circle, that's what IASME Governance covers. So that is more about understanding your risk and managing your risk, having policies and procedures in place, like a security management plan, having plans in place in case of an incident, and making your staff aware of cybersecurity issues. So it's similar to ISO 27001, but it's more practical and achievable and affordable for small companies. Interestingly, IASME governance includes the GDPR requirements. So this is the General Data Protection Regulation. Many of you will know that this is enforced and you can be fined quite high amounts of money if you breach GDPR regulations. Um, if you have shown that you've done as much as you can towards putting GDPR requirements in place, your fine will be less. And this is one of the only certificates you can get that shows that you have put these requirements in place and had independent verification that you have done that. So we get, for example, a lot of charities get this certificate exactly for the GDPR requirements part of it. Just a quick mention about the supply chain. So we find if you don't ask your suppliers to put technical controls in place, they don't get round to it. So of course, it's not because they don't want to, it's not because they're trying to be insecure. They just don't get round to it. It's the housekeeping things that are always on the bottom of your list. I mean, even us, we try and get Cyber Essentials every year. Well, we do get Cyber Essentials every year. Um, and for us, it's a very useful thing to just go through. When we get the Cyber Essentials Plus, there's usually at least one thing that we've missed, we've forgotten. And by doing the Cyber Essentials Plus, it just makes us check everything. And if you don't ask your suppliers to get Cyber Essentials, the chances are they don't have these controls in place, and that puts your company at risk. Also, of course, if your suppliers can have cyber insurance, that with the technical and legal backup, that also means that your company has more resilience. So we would encourage you, certainly for your suppliers, to ask them to get Cyber Essentials. But if their suppliers can as well, that then you start becoming a very much more resilient and secure ecosystem. So in summary, Cyber Essentials actually is quite simple. We hope that you find it simple as well, and should be very low cost. But it is effective at stopping the majority of common cyber attacks. If you can get your supply chain to have Cyber Essentials and the insurance, you would be in a very much more secure and resilient position to be in. So if you have any questions about this, please do get in contact with us or any of our certification bodies. You can see them all listed on our website. And yes, we look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much.